Hey guys, what's up? Hope you're all doing well. I am going to show you my Razor Crest creation in Starfield. And of course, the Razor Crest is the ship the Mandalorian flew in The Mandalorian, of course. And we all know what happened to the Razor Crest, obviously. I might try to recreate that scene someday, but for now, I hope to keep my ship well and alive. And of course, before I go any further, by the way, I know this is not canon to Star Wars. Remember, I am using Starfield ship parts and pieces here, so I'm limited to that in that way. But with that said, I have to say that Starfield Shipbuilder is extremely impressive. I've gone in here and I'm absolutely in love with it. I cannot wait to create more Star Wars creations. I want to create other original creations as well with this shipbuilder. And, with this Razor Crest, my ultimate goal was to get the general profile down of the Razor Crest. I know you have these landing gears right here kind of sticking out the front, but overall, it has these, what are supposed to be engines sticking out here on the wings. Now, these are technically fuel cells. I'll go into that more on how I built this and where I started. But overall, I think I got the profile of the Razor Crest down pretty well. Now, I'm sure somebody out there is going to do a better version of that, and I challenge you all to try to make a better version of the Razor Crest. And if you do, share it with me in the comments down below. Now, another notable thing about this ship in particular is that the landing bay or the entrance of the ship is actually in the front. I could not figure out a way to flip this, unfortunately, so I had to put it in the front. So again, there's some limitations to this, and it could also be simply because I didn't go check out other starports and see if there's a landing gear or landing bay, I should say, that I could put in the back of my ship. So hopefully I can find a landing bay that will do that. But personally, I love the look of it in the front. I think it looks freaking awesome, especially when you approach the ship and are entering it from, the landing pad. So I think that's really cool. But with that said, I know you're all asking, how do you start? Where do you begin? And where I began was I ended up buying the Watchdog 2 ship over in Aquila City on the planet of Cheyenne. But the Watchdog 2 is one of my favorite ships in the game so far. I made some major changes to it, starting off with the landing gear right here. So if you look at the original Watchdog 2, it has these really big landing gear feet. That's what you want to call them. And it looks very impressive, don't get me wrong. But it does not look anything like the Razor Crest. So my goal was to get low profile landing gear on this ship to kind of match that sleek profile of the Razor Crest. And this was the best I could do for now. Now, another big change that I did was I added 2 hab modules here to the back. So I have a armory hab module, and then I've added a captain's quarters hab module as well. And the armory is really cool because this definitely screams Razor Crest right here. You can put prisoners in there. You can put your weapons on display. So personally, I think the armory habitat is a must if you are building a Razor Crest. And I also put another armory in the front here as well, below the cockpit. So that way, as you walk directly into the ship, you're greeted with the armory, which I think is really cool because you want to be a badass Mandalorian, right? You want to see the badass stuff right when you walk into your Razor Crest ship. Now, before I go any further, I do have to say this. I kept the original reactor on this ship to keep it simple, and it's a Class A reactor. So remember, when you're building ships in Starfield, you always want to start with the reactor because every piece that you hook into the ship from there on has to match the reactor's class. So remember, this is a Class A reactor, so therefore every weapon that I connect to this ship, like this Mauler 104L cannon, has to be Class A to match that reactor. Same thing with this pulse laser and this missile launcher. So just keep that in mind when you're building ships in Starfield. Now, I kept the cockpit original. I think this cockpit fits that Razor Crest look perfectly, and I love this cockpit. I did not want to replace it at all. Another addition I did was this front Hope Tech nose piece, which I think looks really cool. Without it, it doesn't look quite right, so if you remove it here and you don't have it on the ship, it just doesn't look quite right to me, and with it, it just looks more sleek and fast, in my opinion. Now, I also added these pieces right here, which are Stroud engine bracers. So I added these to either side of this habitat module right here. And then on the ends here are what looks like engines, but they're actually fuel tanks. So these are technically fuel tanks right here that I just attached to those pieces. Now, one limitation that I did run into with this build was the fact that originally what I wanted to do was take this fuel cell and I wanted to flip this and piece it together like that. See that right here? And then I wanted to move it here to attach it to the wing, but you'll notice that the shipbuilder of Starfield does not have an attachment point for the outside of the fuel cell, which is very disappointing. Hopefully they patch in something where it gives you more flexibility. So that was a limitation that I ran into, and I had to work around it by just simply bloop, placing it just like that. So, you know, it works, and it gives you that profile, overall profile that you're looking for. Now, another thing that I did was I took the cargo pieces. They were originally attached to the side of the ship just like this, and then I just moved them up here into that section to kind of give it more of that profile that we're looking for. So I think overall, I think it looks pretty good. I think it's looking pretty decent. Now, with the actual engines, you'll notice the back here, these engines right here, I kind of experimented with this, by the way, and I placed these engines up here originally, like this. So if you wanted to do that, you could. You could do it that way as well if you wanted that true round engine over there at the top. But I felt like these are like kind of little baby engines, if you will, and they didn't do the look justice of the Razor Crest. I wanted something big and beefy, so I put these fuel cells there instead, and I think that makes it look more like the Razor Crest. Because if you look at the engines of the Razor Crest, they're really big compared to the rest of the ship. Now, I decided to put the engines at the bottom here, and if you look at it from the back, again, it's not going to look identical to the Razor Crest. You're missing the entrance to the Razor Crest from the back. It's on the front. You have these engines at the bottom here, but overall, I'm pretty happy with it, and it looks badass when it's flying, by the way. Now, also, other additions are port windows that I added to it, right here and here. And I added a port window to the back area as well, right here, so you can see out into space when you're walking around in the ship. I believe I also added this missile launcher at the front. I don't think the original Watchdog has a third weapon system, so I do recommend that you add a third weapon system to your Razor Crest. Another addition were these cool little Horizon weapon mounts, just to make it look cool in the front. And then what else did I do? Also, I moved the, the docker from the front to the top, because if you look at the Watchdog, what it has is a docker in the front. So I removed that because that did not remind me of the Razor Crest at all. And I placed the docker on the top, which I think looks much better in my opinion. And then I also ended up adding the shield to the top as well. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the exterior of the Razor Crest. Now let's talk about the space battles with this ship. I was very impressed with the handling. Of course, it's using the Watchdog 2 as its foundation, so I think that's a good start. And even with the engines positioned differently and with totally different engines than the Watchdog 2, I was still very impressed with the handling, and it did very well performing against enemy ships, especially with that third missile launcher added onto the ship. So it has a third weapon system compared to the Watchdog 2's 2 weapon systems. So overall, I felt like a true bounty hunter in this ship, And yeah, I think this ship is definitely going to be my home ship for a very long time. And I'm going to be doing more ships. And again, let me know if you want to see that in the comments down below. Another addition, by the way, is on the back. I added this piece as well. And these are pieces that you definitely want to add, because if you don't, it just looks weird. You know, you have like this back piece. So if I didn't add these, it just looks kind of flat on the back. So I like to add these pieces that just add a little bit of more, you know, character to my Razor Crest, you know. And I'm curious to see what other people do with their Razor Crest builds. I have not seen any Razor Crest builds just yet. And that's one of the reasons why I did this one. And the fact that I absolutely love the Razor Crest. It's one of my favorite ships in Star Wars. And I really hope that Lucasfilm decides to bring it back. I know that it got destroyed in The Mandalorian, of course. I was heartbroken when they did that with the Razor Crest. So hopefully in the future, they bring it back. That would be so awesome to see. But let me know in the comments down below, what do you think of my Razor Crest build? Again, please don't be too harsh on it. I know it's not exact. I know it's not canon. But I'm absolutely loving the shipbuilder in Starfield. And again, there's been some mind-blowing Star Wars creations in Starfield so far, including Millennium Falcons. We've had Y-Wings. What else? We've had B-Wings as well. So there's been a lot of really cool creations in Starfield. And I cannot wait to see what mods do to the game in the coming months. But that's going to do it for the video. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, astronauts. If you want to see more videos just like this, let me know in the comments down below. And I will see you all later. Take it easy, take care, and see you later.